Picture your morning. You wake up, you go to the kitchen. You open the pill organizer, take out the tablet, and reach for the coffee that has been waiting since the timer started it. Pill in one hand, coffee in the other. You swallow both within 30 seconds of each other and consider yourself responsible. Disciplined. A person who takes their health seriously. Now picture what is happening inside your body in the 60 minutes that follow, because what I am about to tell you is something almost no senior who takes blood pressure medication has ever been told, and it starts in that exact moment. The pill, the coffee, the 30 seconds between them. I'm Dr. Eleanor Bennett. Subscribe to this channel before we continue, because this video is about a habit so ordinary, so universal, so completely unremarkable that nobody thinks to question it. And that is precisely what makes it dangerous. Let me start with something that sounds counterintuitive. The most disciplined patients, the ones who never miss a dose, the ones whose pill organizer is always perfectly filled, the ones who take their medication at the exact same time every single morning, are sometimes the ones whose medication is performing least effectively. Not because they are doing anything wrong in the obvious sense, because they have never been told that what surrounds the dose matters almost as much as the dose itself. Let me start with Barbara, because Barbara is, in the best possible way, the most reliable patient imaginable. Barbara was 67, retired, and had been on amlodipine for 2 years. Her compliance was flawless. Same time every morning, 7:15, without exception. Her blood pressure readings at home were inconsistent in a way that frustrated her. Some mornings excellent, other mornings higher than she expected, with no pattern she could identify. Her doctor had adjusted her dose once, and the inconsistency had continued. Nobody could explain it. Barbara had begun to wonder whether the medication was working at all. What nobody had asked Barbara, in 2 years of checkups and dose adjustments, was what she did in the 30 minutes surrounding her 7:15 dose. The answer, when it finally came out, was simple. She made a strong pot of coffee the night before on a timer. By 7:15, when she took her pill, the coffee had been ready and waiting for 45 minutes. She drank the first cup immediately after swallowing the tablet, often a second cup within the hour. She had done this every single morning for 2 years. The inconsistency in her readings was not a mystery. It was a pattern. On the mornings when the coffee was stronger, the readings were higher. On the mornings when she had less, when she was out of beans, or had a morning appointment and skipped the second cup, the readings were better. The medication was not failing. The coffee was interfering with it in a way that was completely invisible to everyone who had never thought to ask the right question. Here is what caffeine actually does in the body, and why it matters so much in the context of blood pressure medication. Caffeine is a stimulant. In the cardiovascular system, it works by blocking receptors for adenosine, a chemical that naturally promotes relaxation and dilation of blood vessels. Block those receptors, and the vessels constrict. The heart beats slightly faster, blood pressure rises. In a healthy person without cardiovascular concerns, a morning cup of coffee produces a blood pressure elevation that is temporary, modest, and well tolerated. The body's own regulatory systems absorb it within an hour or two. This is not a health crisis. It is a normal physiological response. But now layer that response onto a senior who is simultaneously taking a medication specifically designed to relax those same blood vessels and lower that same blood pressure. Amlodipine is relaxing the smooth muscle and artery walls. Lisinopril is blocking the hormone system that tightens them. Losartan is doing the same from a slightly different angle. Metoprolol is slowing the heart rate and reducing cardiac output. And caffeine, arriving in the bloodstream within 15 to 30 minutes of that first cup, is pushing in exactly the opposite direction. Constricting vessels, raising heart rate, increasing pressure. The medication and the coffee are not working together. They are working against each other. And the blood pressure reading taken an hour after that morning cup is not showing you how your medication is performing. It is showing you the net result of your medication and your coffee having a physiological argument, with your cardiovascular system as the battlefield. This does not mean coffee causes a medical emergency every morning. For most people, the interaction is a matter of reduced effectiveness rather than acute danger. But here is something that makes this interaction specifically significant for seniors, something that goes beyond the simple caffeine versus medication conflict and into the biology of an aging cardiovascular system. Blood pressure follows a natural daily rhythm. In most people, it is lowest during sleep, begins rising in the early morning hours, even before waking, peaks in the mid-morning, dips slightly in the afternoon, and rises again in the early evening before declining toward sleep. This rhythm exists because the body is preparing itself for the demands of the day. It is driven by the release of stress hormones, by changes in nervous system activity, and by the body's transition from rest to waking function. In seniors, this morning surge in blood pressure is often more pronounced than in younger adults. The arteries are less elastic. The regulatory systems that smooth out pressure changes respond more slowly. And the morning window, from waking until approximately 2 hours after B, represents the period of highest cardiovascular risk in the day. Strokes, heart attacks, dangerous rhythm disturbances. These events cluster in the morning hours, not by coincidence, but because the cardiovascular system is navigating its most demanding daily transition. Into that already pressurized window, add a blood pressure medication designed to lower pressure and a cup of coffee designed to raise it, and the body is managing competing pharmacological forces during the period when it is already under the most physiological stress. This is why the morning routine matters so profoundly for seniors on blood pressure medication. It is not just about absorption chemistry, it is about timing a medication intervention to work with the body's natural rhythm rather than against the combined pressure of morning cardiovascular surge, caffeine stimulation, and post-sleep dehydration, all at once, all in the same critical window. Clarence was 70 and had been on losartan for 3 years. His evening readings were consistently good. His morning readings were high enough that his doctor had discussed increasing his dose. But when a careful conversation finally happened about his specific morning routine, the strong coffee taken simultaneously with his pill, the immediate movement afterward, the lightheadedness he mentioned almost as an aside, a different picture emerged. His medication was not failing in the evenings because the dose was too low. His mornings were producing readings that didn't reflect the medication's true performance because everything around the dose was working against it. The dose increase never happened, the morning routine changed, and the readings aligned. But for a senior whose blood pressure is difficult to control, whose dose has been adjusted multiple times without achieving consistent results, or whose morning readings are inexplicably higher than afternoon readings, caffeine deserves serious consideration as an unrecognized contributing factor. And the coffee story is just the beginning. Because caffeine is only the most obvious player in the morning routine of a senior on blood pressure medication. There are others that receive even less attention. Let me tell you about Vincent. Vincent was 73, meticulous, and deeply committed to what he called his morning health ritual. He woke at 6, took his lisinopril, and within the next 30 minutes consumed what he believed was an exemplary health routine: a large glass of grapefruit juice, a green tea, and a vitamin supplement with a glass of water. He was, in his own estimation, giving his body everything it needed to start the day well. What he was actually doing was creating a pharmacological interference pattern that his prescribing physician had never anticipated, because nobody had asked about the ritual, and Vincent had never thought to mention it. Grapefruit juice. This is the one that surprises people most. Grapefruit, and grapefruit juice, contains compounds called furanocoumarins that block an enzyme in the intestinal wall responsible for breaking down many medications before they enter the bloodstream. When that enzyme is blocked, medications are absorbed in higher concentrations than intended. The dose the doctor prescribed reaches the bloodstream at a level the prescription never accounted for. In blood pressure medications processed by this pathway, certain calcium channel blockers, including some forms of amlodipine-class drugs, this can mean the medication hits harder and lasts longer than designed. The result is not always obvious as a grapefruit effect. It often presents as unexpected dizziness, excessive blood pressure lowering, lightheadedness when standing, symptoms that get attributed to the medication being too strong, prompting a dose reduction, when the actual issue is an avoidable dietary interaction. Vincent's morning dizziness, which he had been experiencing for 8 months and had told nobody about because it passed quickly, resolved within 2 weeks of removing the grapefruit juice from his routine. His dose did not change. His medication did not change. His ritual changed. And his mornings changed with it. Green tea is less dramatic but still relevant. The caffeine content is lower than coffee but not negligible, particularly in strong brews consumed on an empty stomach. More importantly, green tea contains compounds that can interact with certain medications affecting absorption and metabolism. For most patients on standard blood pressure medications, green tea is not a significant concern. But in a senior who is also taking blood thinners, certain heart rhythm medications, or medications that interact with the same metabolic pathways, even green tea deserves to be part of the conversation. There is one more morning companion that deserves attention, and it is one that most people assume is harmless because it is solid rather than liquid. Food, specifically the absence of it. Many seniors take their blood pressure medication on a completely empty stomach because they were told to take it first thing in the morning, and they associate first thing with before breakfast. For some medications, this timing is appropriate, or at least not harmful. For others, particularly metoprolol, taking the medication on an empty stomach significantly reduces and destabilizes its absorption, leading to unpredictable blood levels throughout the day. And for medications that lower blood pressure, particularly in a senior whose vascular system is already adjusting from the night's rest, an empty stomach combined with caffeine and the morning cardiovascular surge creates a body with minimal buffer against a pressure drop. No food means less fluid in the digestive system. Less fluid means a lower blood volume baseline. A lower blood volume baseline means the medication's pressure-lowering effect lands harder. Pauline was 68, on amlodipine, and had been experiencing pronounced morning dizziness for over a year. She had learned to compensate, sitting for a few minutes before standing, gripping the towel rail in the bathroom, taking the stairs one careful step at a time. She had developed a cautious morning choreography around a symptom she had never mentioned because it had never risen to the level of a fall. When the full morning picture was assembled, empty stomach, immediate coffee, immediate movement, medication taken at the peak morning cardiovascular surge, the explanation was clear. A small amount of food before or alongside the medication, a 20-minute delay before coffee, and a slower morning pace resolved the dizziness within 10 days. Pauline said the difference felt like someone had finally turned the volume down on a sound she had stopped noticing because it had been there for so long. The broader principle here is the one most seniors have never been given. The 30 to 60-minute window surrounding your morning blood pressure medication is not neutral territory. What you consume in that window, what you drink, what you eat, what supplements you add, enters the same bloodstream, interacts with the same biological processes, and either supports or undermines the work the medication is designed to do. Now let me be specific about what this looks like differently for different medications, because not all blood pressure medications are affected equally, and understanding which category yours falls into matters. Amlodipine, as a calcium channel blocker, is most affected by grapefruit interactions and by the direct counterpressure of caffeine-induced vasoconstriction. If you take amlodipine and drink coffee immediately after, you are asking your medication to relax blood vessels at the exact moment caffeine is telling those vessels to tighten. The reading you take an hour later reflects that conflict, not the medication's true performance. Lisinopril and losartan, as ACE inhibitors and ARBs respectively, are less directly affected by grapefruit but are highly sensitive to the overall fluid and electrolyte environment of the morning. Taking these medications after a night of inadequate hydration on an empty stomach, immediately followed by coffee which has mild diuretic properties, creates a fluid environment where the medication's pressure-lowering effect can overshoot. The dizziness that follows is not the medication being too strong in a fixed sense. It is the medication operating in a dehydrated, caffeine-stimulated body that responds differently than the body the dose was calibrated for. Metoprolol, as a beta blocker, can have its absorption affected by food and by the timing of consumption relative to meals. Taking metoprolol on a completely empty stomach versus with a small amount of food changes how consistently it is absorbed. And caffeine, by stimulating the sympathetic nervous system in a way that partially counteracts beta blockade, can blunt the heart rate and pressure effects that metoprolol is specifically designed to produce. These are not reasons to stop drinking coffee. They are reasons to think carefully about when you drink it and what surrounds it. Let me tell you what the corrected morning routine looks like, because this is the practical part. And it does not require giving up coffee, it does not require a dramatic overhaul, and it does not require anything more complicated than a small restructuring of an existing habit. Take your blood pressure medication with a full glass of plain water. Not coffee, not juice, not grapefruit juice, plain water. Give the medication 20 to 30 minutes to begin its absorption before introducing anything that might compete with or alter that process. This one change alone, water instead of coffee for the first swallow, removes the most direct source of morning interference. Wait at least 30 minutes, ideally 45, before your first cup of coffee. This is not a permanent deprivation. It is not a sacrifice. It is a gap, a protected window where the medication gets to do its work before caffeine arrives to argue with it. This is not a permanent deprivation. It is a window, a gap between the medication entering your system and caffeine arriving to push back against it. Many seniors who have done this describe a noticeable improvement in how consistent their morning readings become within 1 to 2 weeks of the change. Eliminate grapefruit and grapefruit juice from the morning window entirely if you take a calcium channel blocker, not just reduced, eliminated. The interaction is too significant and too unpredictable to manage with moderation. Hydrate before you medicate. A glass of water upon waking. Before the pill, before the coffee, before anything. Gives the cardiovascular system volume to work with and reduces the sharpness of any pressure change the medication might produce in a depleted morning body. And have the conversation with your prescriber that has likely never happened. Bring your morning routine to your next appointment. Not your medication list, your routine. What you drink, in what order, over what window of time, every morning. That information is part of your medication's performance profile. It belongs in the room. Barbara made the change, not dramatically. She still had her coffee. She simply waited 40 minutes. Her morning readings stabilized within 3 weeks in a way that 2 years of dose adjustments had never achieved. The inconsistency that had frustrated her doctor, confused her, and led to an unnecessary dose increase simply disappeared when the coffee stopped arriving in the same window as the medication. She said afterward, "I felt like I had been doing everything right for 2 years. And I had been. I just didn't know about the 40 minutes. The 40 minutes, that is what this video is about. Not giving up coffee, not overhauling your life. Understanding that the 30 seconds between the pill and the cup matters more than almost any senior has ever been told. And now you have been told. Share this video with someone whose morning routine looks exactly like Barbara's. Subscribe to this channel, and I will see you in the next video.